So, Slash, why not just reform the Snake Pit?
That's a good question. Well, you know, the thing about Snake Pit was, it was, even though it was sort of my project, it was a band, and there was two incarnations of it, and I treated both of them as a group, sort of the same as, say, Guns N' Roses was, where everybody was equal and so on and so forth. Where when I did my last record, it was more of a personal project that was more akin to a solo record. And I didn't want to, I mean, I hired a bass player that I knew, and I hired a drummer who I thought was great, and all the singers and all that was a whole adventure into itself. But it was really just a very different kind of endeavor than Snake Pit was. So it never even crossed my mind to call it Snake Pit.
So, your solo album includes Lemmy, Fergie, Alice Cooper, Kid Rock, Chris Cornell, Nicole Scherzinger, Ozzy, and that's not even the complete list. Is there anyone you haven't worked with yet that you'd like to?
Well, see, that's the thing. A lot of people ask me about, you know, like if it was a wish list of singers or something, and I don't look at it like that. I've never been one to collaborate with people along sort of the lines of a wish list. When it came to working on my album, I wrote music just sort of. You know, different sort of song ideas and this and that, and I would just think in my head who would sound good out of all the sort of great singers I've ever heard, who would sound good on this particular piece of music. And that's really what dictated the choice of singers. So it really isn't a matter of who's left or who else would I like to get. It was really inspired by how that music, what voice would fit with that music. I mean, that it's been asked of me before, like who would be the dream band, and I mean, I just don't think along those lines. But if I was going to stop and pick some musicians to jam with, to put a crazy band together, it would have to have like Keith Moon in it, and Mark Bolan, you know, Jim Morrison. Maybe you know, I could alternate between Keith Moon and John Bonham. You know, I mean, I could think of some. Put John Entwistle would be great. So that list could go on for days. But I don't tend to dwell on fantasy stuff. I'm very much a realist and very much in the present. So,
one person I intentionally left off that list was Miles Kennedy, who's become a bigger part of your world recently, and I'm just wondering how that relationship developed.
Miles Kennedy, that's a pretty interesting story. When Velvet Revolver was first looking for a singer before Scott Weiland came into the picture, Matt Sorum had mentioned this guy Miles Kennedy, and so we sent him a demo. I didn't know who he was, and he sent him a demo. And I guess from what Miles' account of it is, he got the demo, he liked the music, but he just felt sort of got cold feet, and never submitted the demo with his vocal on it. So fast forward however many years, and we're looking for a singer again, and Matt Sorum brings Miles Kennedy up again, and this time Miles is in a band called Alter Bridge, and doesn't want to leave his band, so I don't think we ever sent him the demo. He flat out said, you know, I can't leave my group, and so on. And I just, you know, I'm just like, it stuck in my head, this Miles Kennedy fellow who I've never met and I've never heard, but everybody keeps talking about him. And then he had been called into Led Zeppelin to do the Zeppelin tour, and I heard about that. I thought, well, this guy must be good, you know. And so I looked him up online, and I saw Alter Bridge, and you know, and he's just sort of meek little singer guy playing guitar and with a great voice. And so I sort of left it at that. I respected the idea that he was loyal enough to his group that he wouldn't just jump ship and join Velvet Revolver. Anyway, so fast forward, and I'm making the solo record, and I've done pretty much all the material's finished and all the vocals are done, and I have two songs that have been staring at me during the whole process of making the record that I couldn't figure out who should sing. Like, I couldn't think of the voice that would fit these songs. None of the, you know, to go back to what you were saying before, you know, it's not a wish list of singers, it's who fits the material. So at this point I thought, well, you know, there's that Miles Kennedy guy. just sort of a shot in the dark, I'll call him up and I send him one of these pieces of music. And remember, we had never met. I outside of you two, I don't know what he looks like or what his personality is like. And I sent him the song, and about a week later, he sends it back. And I listen to it, and it's fucking fantastic. And it's this song called Starlight. And so I flew him into Los Angeles, and we met, and he's a really unassuming, really well-mannered character, and he did this amazing vocal, and so we hit it off really well. And then he went back to Spokane, and I went in the studio and started mastering the record, and I still had that one song left that still didn't have a vocal on it. So while we were mastering the record, I just got this wild hair and called him up and said, hey, I've got one more song. And I sent it to him, and he put a vocal on it, and I sort of squeezed it into the mastering. And so all this time I've been thinking, how am I going to do this tour? As far as I'm concerned, making a record without touring on it is inconceivable. So I'd been thinking about different singers who could do all the different types of songs that are on the record, and also do a lot of my back catalog and whatnot. And it occurred to me that Miles was probably one of the best voices I'd heard in a long time. So I just took a chance, knowing that he's an Alter Bridge, but asked him if he would be interested in doing the tour. And he was on a break for Alter Bridge, and so he said yes. And I hired Todd Kearns and Brent Fitz and Bobby Schneck as sort of the backline, and he came in for a week of rehearsal and learned all the material, and we've been on tour ever since. So I've really developed a chemistry with him, and we've started working on the next record, which he's going to sing the entire record, and it's coming out fantastic. So that's a story about Miles Kennedy.
What's it like with him singing? I mean, I'm going to ask him about this as well, but you've got some really diverse singers on this album. I mean, Lemmy is quite different from Ozzy, and obviously the girls as well. It's I don't know. I mean, is he going to sing "Beautiful Dangerous"?
We do perform "Beautiful Dangerous," and we do a male version of it, but he sings it fantastic. It's weird. It was a 1 in a million shot. I don't think I know any singers who could sing the diversity of material that he sings. I mean, so I feel it was like sort of a blessing that he and I hooked up when we did.
Can you tell me a bit about what Miles Kennedy is like off stage?
He's just, originally he's a guitar player, and he started singing because, as musicians often do, it's hard to find singers. So he started singing, and it turned out that he was pretty good at it. So in Alter Bridge, he still plays guitar. In my band, it's the first time he's ever fronted a band without a guitar to hide behind. But originally, he's a guitar player, and guitar players tend to have very different personalities than, say, lead singers. It just by nature. And so he has more of a guitar player's personality. So he's very quiet and like I said before, very mild mannered and very cool to hang out with, very unassuming.
Yeah, no hijinks, off stage?
No, he's as laid back, if not more so, than I am. So we get along great. Yeah.
Which songs are your favorite to either listen to or to play live?
Well, like any record I've ever done, I never actually sit down and listen to it after having made it. If it comes on the radio is one thing, but I never just consciously say, I'm going to listen to my record. Actually, I hate it if somebody does put it on and I happen to be in the same room. When you make a record, you put your all into every single song. And I mean, the only reason a song should make it on a record is if it's something that you really feel that you want to express. And so every song has got its own individual sort of significance. So I can't say there's like a favorite song on the record, really.
Okay, they're like babies.
Yeah, I know. It's sort of a cliche, but they are like sort of children. You tend to start to pick favorites later,
How did you actually go about putting the album together? I understand that the singers wrote the lyrics and the melodies.
Yeah, well, the whole concept behind having this record with all these people on it, its inception was based on the idea that I wanted to do a record do a record where I get people to come and perform on my record as opposed to me going and performing on theirs. Because I've done a lot of sessions and worked with a lot of people over the years. And there's a certain kind of magic that happens when you work with somebody that you really admire, is really talented, and you get to play on their album. And then the session's over and off they go and off you go, and it's a sort of disconnect that happens. So I wanted to get that feeling of having people on my material, you know. So when I wanted to get in touch with these people, I was very humbled by the whole concept of having to call them up and then send them a demo and see if they would do it. But I was prepared for the worst. So I called up the people who I had known the longest to sort of get that ball rolling. So it was Lemmy, Ozzy, Alice Cooper, and Iggy Pop were the initial guys that I went to first. And I sent them the demos, and they were all really wonderful about it and jumped on board. And that gave me the confidence to call up people that I'd met and hung out with before, but didn't really know them that well, and they didn't owe me anything, you know, on a friendship level or anything. Not that any of them did, but and then it just kept going, and I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was artist to artist. I didn't call managers, I didn't call record companies, I didn't involve my attorney, I didn't do any of that. So it was a very personable type of thing. And once I, you know, got everybody signed on, it was, you know, one of the things that I told them, I said, well, here is either an arrangement or bits and pieces of ideas of a song, or however I saw fit to give it to them. And you can either make up whatever you want, we can sit together and collaborate on it, however you want to do it. And so every song had a different story as to how it was recorded. Not how it was recorded, but how it was written. And once we got past the writing process, I booked some studio time with Eric Valentine, who produced the record, and we set off. The first song we did was "We're All Gonna Die" with Iggy Pop, and Iggy was great, and he sort of set the tone for the whole rest of the record. And everybody just came in, spent a day recording their vocal, and we'd hang out, and it was a great experience.
And I've got to ask, I apologize, but I've got to ask, what was it like doing that video with Fergie for "Beautiful Dangerous"?
Oh, it was great. I mean, you know, Fergie's a friend and all that. So I know a lot of people want to think there's a lot of, you know, people going like, you know, what was it like to? But I mean, she and I have been good friends, and she's a pretty frisky individual. And like in Black Eyed Peas, she's definitely an entity that you recognize in that environment, but outside of that, she's as rock and roll as they come. So it was her idea. The whole video was basically her concept. I just told her, I said, we got to shoot a video, and a couple days later I was like, I've got an idea, and she came at me with this whole thing, and it was, I just had to just sort of be me and sort of drape myself with Fergie, and it was cool.
Can you tell me anything about the new album?
You know, I haven't been able to put into words in my own mind exactly what the new record is going to be. From the way that it's going to be a pretty musically epic record. I think it's probably over and above what I did on the last record, the most freedom that I've had to make a record so far, and I'm really doing a lot of things that I just haven't really done before. But it's a very rockin' record, you know. So it's not like I'm not going into the avant-garde jazz world or any kind of fusion exploration. But I definitely, you know, getting a chance to just sort of write things as I want them, and then Miles is writing his part to it, and it's. And he's a very thoughtful lyricist, so there's a lot going on his end. And we're just now starting to really put the music together with the band, and it's going to be really cool. So that's as much as I can tell you at this point.
Do you have a name for it yet?
No, we haven't gotten to the name part yet. It's the idea of the title and also the album cover, because I'm always part of that process, is all in the stewing process.
And are there any new songs in the set list that you've got planned for Stoke?
No, we have a couple of them that we played at Soundcheck, and it's way too premature right now because of the whole YouTube thing to start putting out new material. So unfortunately, we've decided not to do anything yet.
So about Stoke, I mean, you didn't live there for very long, but this gig is being viewed as a homecoming gig, certainly by the people of Stoke and even Great Britain on the whole. What memories do you have of Stoke?
Well, I spent enough time there to get a really good memory of a lot of different things from there. I mean, I went to school there. I had obviously all family over there, and I just had really great memories of sort of growing up there. And it's during that crucial time when you're the most easily influenced, when you digest the most information when you're like around 4, 5, and 6 years old, So they're very crisp in my mind. And, my grandfather and my grandmother and my uncles and aunts and all that were all wonderful to me. And, it's such a sort of quaint little, from my memory of it, small, sort of almost village type town, in Blurton, right? It was just a very small area. It was very cozy and very personable, and everybody knew each other, and really pretty to me, So I have really positive memories of Stoke. Yeah.
In the interim, since you moved, have you been back to Stoke?
No, that's the thing. One of the interesting sidebars to going to play Stoke is that for years I've been trying to get a gig there, and promoters and stuff just blew me off, and it made it sound like there was nowhere to play there. It was just such a small town that there was no venues, and so it's probably come up half a dozen times over the last 20 years that let's do a gig in Stoke, right? And nobody was interested. So now that I'm doing this sort of solo thing, I've been able to, one of the things I said is I want to play places that I've not played. If there's an audience there, I want to go play there. And Stoke came up, and I was like, I definitely want to. And this place where Victoria Hall's been there forever, So I'm really looking forward to it. But yeah, it's definitely been one of those things where it's been on my mind for years.
Are you expecting many family and friends at this gig?
Well, I mean, my uncle Ian, who still lives in Stoke, will be there, and he's got a guest list, so we'll see. What's funny though is it's the first time I've been back in 40 years, but last year I brought my dad with me to England, and it was the first time in 40 years that he'd been back, and I left him with Ian for about a month, so he got to sort of revisit his old haunts and his childhood and all that kind of stuff. So it was really interesting. I mean, he was gone for so long. At one point, I thought maybe he's not going to come back. Maybe he's just going to stay. But anyway, so it's been really cool to get I mean, I've seen Ian over the years, but I've also been reacquainted with a lot of my other relatives some of them which I didn't even know. So it's been cool.
And your relatives, do they call you Slash?
At least to my face, they do.
What was it like? Do you have any recollection of moving? I mean, moving as a young child from your childhood home to any place really can be quite traumatic.
I remember everything, about it. I even remember the airport. I remember the flight, going to Los Angeles. I remember the first night in L.A. I remember I was actually stayed at my grandmother's house in Los Angeles the first night, and there was an earthquake, and we were watching King Kong. So I remember being stood in the corner that night for being bad, and then we ended up living in Laurel Canyon, and my dad, being a graphic artist, ended up working for David Geffen. One of the main reasons my dad moved to Los Angeles in the first place is, one, because my mom's from there, but also because that's where the music business was really happening at that point. And so my mom and dad both were very creative individuals in the music scene. And so we moved into Laurel Canyon, which is where the whole sort of Crosby, Stills and Nash, Joni Mitchell, the Eagles, Jim Morrison, that whole explosion was going on there. And as much as I regretted at the time leaving home, it's really good that I did, because there was such an amazing creative thing happening in the hills over in LA, and it probably had a lot to do with the musical influence that I have now, you know. Well, I mean, I'm a lifer as a musician, so that'll always be a major part, probably the main motivation for me. You know, that will always be there. But I mean, if I, you know, when I first, as a kid, all the way up until I picked up the guitar, and even then, I still do, is I was always an illustrator, and I was always into art. So that's something that I still do, and I'm very involved with. But I don't really have any plans for slowing down or relaxing. And there's other things that I get myself involved with. I just started a horror movie production company, and so we're knee deep in the first production for that company, you know, for Slasher Films. And I've got 4 movies in development right now. So that's sort of like a side thing for me that I'm very passionate about. But I think it's really will always all be about music, and you know, all the different things that you can do with that.
Do you think you'd ever get together with Rob Zombie, or would that be sort of conflicting interests?
We talked about it. Rob and I talked about it last year in Australia. You know, if there was a script that he was really into, that I was really into, then, you know, if I could help produce it, that would be a great thing to do, you know? Possibilities are endless.
They are. You recently played with Ronnie Wood and B.B. King at the Albert Hall, and that in itself was amazing. But the one thing that stood out to me was when B.B. took your hat.
Yeah, right.
Do you just let
no,
people take your hat?
He was the only one. He asked me for it first. I mean, he didn't just. Yeah,
oh, I know.
Yeah. But he's probably one of the only people I've ever willingly handed my hat over to. You know, but that was one of those brief highlights in my career, that particular evening, to get up with Ronnie, and I mean, get up with BB and Ronnie and Derek, you know, Trucks and all that. It was just really cool. But BB's one of my all-time favorite blues guitar players, you know, and he's been around for so long, and he's seen so many things, and he's such a great musician, such a great singer, and such a great all-around person. It was a huge honor to get up there and play with him. So, and at Royal Albert Hall. I mean, come on.
Nice, nice. And finally, how would you like to be remembered?
You know, I think I'd probably like to be remembered as somebody whose heart was in the right place, and somebody who really cared about, you know, what it is that he does, and loved what he does, and loved the people he worked with and his family, and fucking, you know, maintained his sort of musical or creative integrity, you know, as best he could, and wasn't such a bad guy, you know.